Hi, welcome to SoundOrg TV. On this episode, we're delighted to be joined by publisher and editor of Tone magazine, Jeff Dorgay. Jeff started out as a commercial photographer and gradually transitioned into an online audio magazine that featured a broader outlook on audio, featuring beers, motorbikes, toys. We're delighted to have him here. Welcome to SoundOrg TV. Jeff, welcome to SoundOrg TV. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me on board.
We go back many years. For those not familiar with Tone Audio, can you give us a brief description of how you got into audio, journalism, and publishing?
Well, it was kind of a strange path, actually. I spent most of my early years as an advertising photographer. Had no idea I would pursue writing as a career. Matter of fact, my high school, college prep English teacher told me that I had absolutely no talent or ability. And and oddly enough, I used to get thrown out of English class all the time, reading Rolling Stone instead of doing my homework. And who would have ever guessed that man, Ben Fogg-Torres, would come to be my editor one day? But anyway, started out as a photographer, turned out about 1998, right around there. I had always been kind of at the forefront of digital imaging, and some of my fine artwork was written up in a large format digital printing magazine, and they had asked me to review digital cameras for them. And, I said, well, I took a couple semesters of news writing in college. Let's give it a try. And, before I knew it, I think maybe a year and a half later, I was writing for 15, 16 camera magazines. I was writing for CNET, Rob Report, Macworld, a number of trade journals. And, I've been a Stereophile subscriber since I think about 12. So, the light bulb went off and I thought, hey, I should be one of those audio reviewer guys. And, I sent a letter to John Atkinson and to Robert Harley, and Mr. Atkinson ignored me, but Robert Harley was kind enough to give me a shot. And, I started writing for TASS, I think, early 2003. So I have to give Robert Harley all the credit in the world for giving me a shot. And, after a few issues of doing that, it was okay. But, I knew I was going to be reviewing $800 integrated amplifiers for the rest of my life. I was never really going to get access to the cool stuff. So at the time, my ex-wife was an art director, and we put our heads together and said, hey, why don't we just do a magazine? Why don't we do our own magazine? We've been working for other people's magazines for years, and we had the skill set. So, blindly, I just jumped off the cliff in 2005 and, gave Tone a go. I think the first issue was 55 pages. And, I had known some people in the audio industry before I started Tone, and, they kind of made it clear that if I built it, they would come. And, we humbly started with a 55-page PDF magazine. We decided on publishing electronically back then because most of our friends that were still in the advertising business, everyone was trying to get out of print. And, because you advertise in print magazines, what it costs to advertise in print magazines. And, we really didn't want to be predatory to Stereophile or TASS or HiFi Plus. We wanted to be an addition to, instead of a choice instead of. And so, the planets kind of lined up, and, that's where it started. We just jumped in with both feet and hoped it would work. So here we are 16 years later.
Well, this is your opportunity for some shameless self-promotion. Can you tell us what sets Tone apart in your mind from other magazines out there?
I think what really, I think what sets us apart is our approach. Obviously, our magazine is much more rich photographically, image-wise, than the other print offerings out there, because we can afford to do it. I mean, we're not, because every page isn't a potential moneymaker like it is in a print magazine. So it gives us that opportunity. And again, because of my background, I used to shoot cars for Porsche. I used to shoot cars for Chevrolet. I shot bikes for Ducati. I had the skill set to do these photos without us having to hire an on-staff photographer. But I think what really sets us apart, I'd like to think that I take a much more, I guess, what I would call a concierge approach to high-end audio, where a number of other people in other magazines, and I mean, not to their discredit, but I think the approach is more of, we're the experts and, we know everything. And my approach is more, I see my job more as being like a concierge in a good hotel, where, you just got in, it's 7 o'clock, you're tired. Hey, where do I get good ribs? Where do I get good Chinese food right now? Where can I get some shirts pressed? Because I think there are so many good products out there. It's not about, to me, it's never about finding the best product. It's about finding the best product for you. And it's really about helping our readers, I think, make a short list of products they'd like to audition and hopefully purchase. Back 40 years ago when I bought my first Rega P3, you bought a Lin, you bought a Rega, you bought a Techniques direct drive. Maybe there were 4 or 5 other choices. There just weren't that many choices. And now there are so many different choices. I think people are overwhelmed. So my goal is really just to help you make sense of it all and find some things that you can enjoy your music on. So I think it's a kinder, gentler approach, if you will. So, I'm sure I'll probably take a lot of flack for saying this, but again, that's, again, having read Tass and Stereophile for so many years, I really wanted to create something a little different, where, I don't feel like I'm the star of the magazine. I feel like our readers are the people that are the most important. And so it's, I think it's a little different approach. Hopefully it's helped. We've certainly got a lot of very kind emails from people over the years saying, hey, I read that review. I read that Rega P10 review and I liked it. So I went to the dealer, listened to it, bought it. It did what you said it would do. And I'm happy. When that happens, I've done my job correctly. So.
Well, I like the fact also that you don't just limit to audio. You look at craft beers, different aspects of other things out there which might complement audio.
Well, that was part of the vision as well. I've been accused a few times of not being a pure audio magazine, and on that level, Tone really is self-indulgent, because I'm not just a one-dimensional audio guy. I love audio, I love music, but I like cars, I like watches, I basically like cool stuff. I'm a Herman Miller furniture junkie. And what I found was that there were a lot of people out there, really that shared the same mindset that I did. You and I, most of the time when we get together, we don't even talk about audio. We talk about Formula One, we talk about cars, all of that. And my hope was always that one of the things our industry grapples with is, how do we get new readers? How do we get new people, potential new consumers? And I've always seen a real disconnect, trying to find people to join what we do. And I've seen a number of people over the years that, have high-end cars, enjoy watches, enjoy, I guess, more what I would call the quality file reader rather than the audio file reader. But the disconnect was always at HiFi. And, I'd look at friends of mine and say, well, you just spent $6,000 on an Eames lounge chair, but you have a terrible HiFi system, and a lot of people still really don't know that our stuff exists, but they're very ripe to, again, somebody that spends $6,000 on a chair or $10,000 on a watch won't freak out if you tell them a decent turntable is $6,000 or a good pair of speakers is $20,000. They're used to buying high quality, high craftsmanship, high touch products. So that's honestly, that's where we usually get all of our new readers from. I mean, they read the Mind section in the magazine, they find something fun, and notice that we have all this great hi-fi too. And we're kind of coming full circle. For a while, the music coverage in Tone had decreased a bit just because the music industry had gotten to the point where we weren't getting access to things. We weren't getting access to shows and artists and things like that we used to. So we couldn't have as much of that. And and with the advent of streaming music, people were not as interested in record reviews. But we're gradually bringing more music back into the mix too.
Jeff, there are lots of people interested in audio, but what in your mind does it take to make a good reviewer? What are the qualities when you're hiring someone?
For me, it's a balance. It's a balance of a couple of things. They're finding somebody that's obviously passionate about the gear, finding somebody that can write, at least well enough that we can edit, and someone who doesn't have too much of an agenda one way or the other. Because I mean, again, over the years, I've had people go, yeah, I really want to write for you because I'm going to expose the big conspiracy about, all these cables and all this. And that's not what it's about. Hopefully too, a big thing that I really look for with someone is I would say a balance between a passion for hi-fi, an open-mindedness about hi-fi, and some insight, because again, I think the hardest thing, again, because as I mentioned earlier, because there are so many products out there, it's really necessary for somebody to have had their hands on enough gear, not just sitting at hi-fi shows listening to gear in a room for 5 minutes, but people who have actually owned their fair share of gear and used an amount of gear so that they can put things in perspective, so that I think it makes sense to a potential reader. I mean, I think one of my longest running jokes really is that a lot of new writers and people that we've tried, that have written for us once or twice, they exhaust their adjective gland. Everything is the best. Everything is the best. These are the best speakers I've ever heard. These are the best $10,000 speakers in the world. And, what do you do when you hear something better than that? So it's for me, it's really trying to find somebody with some insight and with some perspective, so that, again, because our job is to help our reader find the gear that will be right for them. It's can you step back from it enough, from the things that you like personally, to make a good suggestion. And it's one thing to talk about gear, and it's another thing to describe a product, I think, in the terms that a potential buyer needs to hear. And that, I think, is a really difficult part of the puzzle, because it's, if you're sitting on the couch and you're reading a review, there are certain things that, I mean, all the flowery prose is great, but that doesn't help you make a purchase decision. And I think that's why our reviews typically have been, I mean, you've known me long enough. I can spin a story as well as anyone can, but everybody's time is limited, and I'm trying to tell you what it does, what it doesn't do, what its functionality is, that kind of stuff. So so that light bulb will go off for you and say, hey, that sounds like something I'd really like to investigate. That's something I'd really like to own. I mean, I have the gear I want. So this isn't about what Jeff loves. It's about helping you, it's kind of sales 101, identify the customer, really.
Cool. Jeff, obviously the last year and a half, there's been some profound changes in the world and in our industry too. You talk to a lot of manufacturers, distributors. Where do you see the hi-fi industry going in the future? What directions do you see things evolving to? Obviously, we don't have shows at the moment, right, and retailer events.
I think good reviews will help more going forward, just because, people don't have as many opportunities to visit dealers. I think retailing is already, as you've seen, has probably started to change a little bit. Personally, if I had to guess, I see so much excitement on the entry level of hi-fi, because I feel there are a lot of just tremendous products that offer a level of performance, pretty unheard of 10 years ago. So the person wanting to get in and, say, spending $1,000 to $5,000 on a music system, I think has more choices than ever. And I think I see the real mega high-end stuff continuing, as much as people think that, you hear all these things see all these things on the web where they say, oh, high-end audio is dying. This is killing high-end audio. I mean, for what I'm seeing from my chair, there's the people that are making the mega gear are selling as much gear as ever, if not more. I think the tougher part for high-end audio right now is the stuff in the middle, because there's so much of it and it's gotten so good. So, I think we may see more online retailing. We may see more, more where, again, where you're trying stuff in home and sending it back if it doesn't work. I mean, until we get to the point where people can get back out and really go to their dealer and I mean, and in some areas, dealers have adapted. They're doing appointments only. If you mask up, you're able to go in and do it, but it's, it's not the same as it was. But by the same token, it seems like it's been a pretty busy year for everyone.
Yeah,
I mean, everyone I've talked to has been, honestly, I think high-end audio's had a really good year. Everybody's staying home. It's like, we're not going on vacation, so let's buy some new speakers. Let's get a new turntable. So have you seen that?
very much. I mean, as just getting products to us has been a challenge, but we've seen a huge increase, especially on the entry type products that you're describing. New people coming into audio, getting their first record player. They're at home. They want something to do. They've exhausted all the Netflix episodes of whatever their chosen, show is. So very, very much so. Following on from what you're saying, are there any trends that you're seeing that you particularly like or don't care for, or?
There's really nothing I don't care for. I mean, again, I'm, if you're excited about audio and you love music and this stuff looks intriguing, whatever path you've chosen to achieve that, I think is great stuff, because I mean, you and I both know, as people who have been longtime audio enthusiasts, you don't end up where you start out. It's usually, I mean, I think there's two real distinct type of customers. I think there's there's the person who is buying a music system or an ability to play music beyond their earbuds, and they may, it's like buying a television. They may just buy a basic $1,500 system, and they enjoy music, and that's all there is. And a certain percentage of them will get the bug, will have the aha moment, and we'll take it further. And that's fine. I'll tell you one trend that I really like, and as someone who sells a lot of turntables, you might disagree with me, but I've really enjoyed streaming, because now the records that I buy are keepers. I mean, again, when you and I were young, you heard that song on the radio, or you saw that video clip on MTV, and you ran down to the record store and you bought that record and you brought it home and it sucked, but you kept it anyway. And now you have 15,000 albums and none of them are really that good. But now, Cubuzz, Tidal, all of that, Spotify, whatever you use, it kind of gives you a little time to kind of chew on a record and listen to it a few times and think, yeah, I'd love to have that on vinyl. And so, I mean, I enjoy the diversity with it. I mean, now everybody can have a bigger record collection, and the vinyl that they love, they can truly treasure. And it's really, it's not quite as frustrating as it was back in the old days. So I guess for me, that seems to be all the arguments out of streaming and how artists get compensated and all of that notwithstanding, on our end as a user, I think it's brought a richer experience to, listening to music.
Well, we've certainly seen that with Chord Electronics, that the quality that you can achieve with streaming, DACs, and digital in general at a fairly modest price is extraordinarily good. And
Right.
we've seen also
Right.
with Rega turntables, I always equate it to, a wine that's maybe higher than the daily drinker, if you're that way inclined. Something that you would enjoy, sit back. That's your turntable experience.
I'm a dinosaur, let's face it. And I still, when I shoot film with a digital camera, I shoot a roll of film. I take 36 pictures that I'll keep 30 of. I don't shoot 10,000 pictures to get one. Half the time when I'm streaming, I play an album front to back anyway. It's really cool to be seeing what readers on Facebook are listening to, friends in the industry. And, a lot of times someone will say, hey, I'm listening to this today. And it's so nice to be able to just go to Rune and punch that up and listen to it right now. I mean, even if there were no COVID going on and I could rush right out to a record store, that's made it a lot more fun to share music with friends. And I do really enjoy that too.
Jeff, you've done some great reviews on our products in recent times, from the fine models to Rega. Is there something from our portfolio of products that has particularly stood out for you?
Rega's always been consistently good. I mean, again, you sell stuff, you carry stuff that I like. I mean, and but honestly, for me, it's that P10. It's really been, I mean, I've had enough experience with the entire Rega range over the years, but this new P10 has improved even further. And I mean, the day that we took it out of the box, the fellow that's going to be joining me on our upcoming podcast series, he was over here, and he's the fellow you helped me out with the P6. He watched me set this thing up go from unboxed to playing records in about 8 minutes. And I've used and owned a lot of fussy turntables over the years, and this is just so exciting because, again, this is, is this turntable $1 million supercar? No. Is it a V8 Vantage? It's way better than you expect for the price asked. It's so easy to use, and it's real consistent. I mean, that's the table that I probably still own about 6 turntables, but that's the record player that the editor of Tone is using to play records on 90% of the time now. So it's just a lovely product. And, knowing Roy's engineering background, having been in the factory a few times, I know the level of just engineering and manufacturing care that goes into this table. And that, for me as a car guy, that really kind of appeals to that engineering geekiness of mine. I mean, it really is an exquisitely built product. It doesn't look like a product that was just kind of kludged together. So I like that too. So the P10, I would say, selfishly, that's kind of a personal love product.
Yeah, it's opened up a lot of new records for me, and we had an interview with Roy where he was talking about Rega really going in a different direction to most people. And I think the P10 really epitomizes that with the less is more philosophy, skeletal design, making something very much like a Formula One car, light, rigid.
Very much so. And I mean, ever since the P9, I've always thought the ceramic platter was super cool. So, I mean, it's, watching that develop too. I mean, the P9 always used to be a table that I would recommend to people that wanted a fairly high-end table, but didn't want to fiddle with a turntable. And I had a reader email me, and he said, I'm so OCD. He said, I can barely go outdoors and be around people. And he said, I'm thinking about getting into vinyl, and what should I buy? And I said, buy P9. I said, get a P9, get a Rega cartridge, 3 screws, done, call it a day, enjoy your record collection. Well, He bought another British record player that, let's just say, we know requires more fiddling. And, it drove him to madness. It really, I mean, he stopped playing records. He, 6 months later, I just said, why did you do that? Not that that's a bad record player, but that's not a record player for somebody who doesn't want to fiddle. And, Jerry Seinfeld told me once that car collectors are wrench turners or check writers. And I think audio enthusiasts are either, there's a fiddliness quotient. You're that person who wants to, you're kind of a journey or a destination person. You want to set it up, get it done, get it optimized, listen to music, or you want to fiddle with the system. And that's a question I always ask readers when they phone in or email in or messenger in with any amount of gear. What's your skill set? What's your skill level? And how much time do you want to spend most of your time listening to music, or do you want to spend most of your time finessing and tweaking? And again, for some people, that's their joy. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, but gosh, if you just want to sit down and listen to records at a very high level, this is a fantastic piece.
Well, I think it gets back to a point that you made earlier, which is not all customers for audio products are looking for a new hobby.
Right, exactly. Perfect. Yes, that's exactly right.
And I think that's maybe a mistake that we make in our industry, thinking that, okay, they're into audio, this is going to be your new hobby, you must care about every tweak and upgrade. Not necessarily the case.
No, and it's funny because back when we still had dealer events, I was talking to a woman at an event who was a doctor, and we were, I was teasing her, and I said, are you here at this event because you're just humoring the other person in your life, or is this something you're interested in? She said, no, she said, I'm the customer, but she said buying a hi-fi system is like buying a Louis Vuitton purse. It's like buying a new S-Class Mercedes. She said, I want, if I need a $50,000 hi-fi system, tell me why I need it, explain it. I'll do my research and I'll buy it. She goes, I don't want to buy a $10,000 system and trade my way up. She said, for me, the system is to enjoy music. So I want to buy a very good hi-fi system and just be done. And I think again, as one car guy to another, that there are plenty of people out there that drive high-end cars that aren't on forums every day arguing about tires, shocks, suspension, oil, all of that crap. They just buy the nice car because they enjoy the nice car. And and again, like you said, I think when we get back to where there's more traffic in the dealers, I think if the dealers could find a way to take more of that perspective, I think they might find more customers,
That's a great point, Jeff. Have you been getting requests for anything in particular to review, or something that you were really looking forward to getting your hands on next, or your ears on?
Well, one thing that we've seen probably even pre-COVID, I would say probably the last 3 years, what we've seen a lot, because our audience has always been about 50% North America and about 50% rest of world. So we have people in London, in Tokyo, in Paris, in New York City, that aren't necessarily living in a giant American house with an enormous living room to put a hi-fi system in. We've really seen, at least amongst our readers, we've seen a real sweet spot in either about the $10,000 system range or about the $100,000 system range. So very high performance integrated amps have really taken on almost a life of their own in the last couple of years. I mean, on the lower end of the price scale, something like the Rega IO is fantastic. And if this was Jeopardy, I'd say, give me integrateds for 10 to 20K, and that's been a real popular area. I'm seeing a lot of people too that are kind of our age buying the last system, if you will. There's a certain amount of that. There's which is again why something like a P10 or, name your favorite $10,000 turntable. A lot of people have been listening to, say, a $2,000 or $3,000 record player, and they're thinking, hey, it's time to just trade up one more time. So seeing a lot of that too. And I'm really getting, we're like when you sent us the fine speakers, I mean, we're seeing a lot better. I think speakers are a lot better than they've ever been. There's been so much more research, so much more, material stuff has been applied where, again, I mean, I'm revealing my age, but I mean, 40 years ago, you kind of had box speakers, quad 57s, and Magnapans. And, there weren't a lot of variations on the theme, but now, we have a lot of manufacturers that can make a great speaker for $1,000 or $1,200. So that's really changing the game too,
Yeah, I think you're right, Jeff. I mean, I'm amazed at what you can get now at a relatively inexpensive price. You put an IO together with a pair of fine bookshelves or, their entry floor standers. And years ago, you would have had to spend multiples of that to get the same performance.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, and again, I mean, the more people I think that get involved in this, the more people, now that it doesn't cost $10,000 and it isn't scary to jump off the cliff and buy a fulfilling music system, I mean, it's a numbers game. I mean, the more people that sample the water, the more people out there that might go, hey, maybe we do really enjoy sitting around on a Saturday night and listening to music. Let's invest a little bit more in this and see where it goes. And that's the hook. I mean, it really will depend on, how far will that journey take you? It may just take you to an IO and a pair of fines. It may take you to $1 million hi-fi system. You never know. I mean, gosh, I never had any idea when this all started way back when that it would have gone as far as it did. And, there are days I kind of pinch myself sitting and thinking, wow, I get to listen to all this cool hi-fi every day. It's pretty amazing to watch where it's gone.
Talking of music, which is what hi-fi is ultimately about, what is Jeff Dorgay listening to, and give us your hot pick.
No, it's about arguing about cables. It's not about music, don't you know? No, you probably will edit that out. But for me, it kind of goes in three directions. The staff likes to tease me as being the crappy boomer rock guy on the so I can always go back to that. I mean, the musical comfort food is always probably 70s rock, 80s stuff. I mean, gosh, I still, I mean, the other day I was driving around in the car, listening to XTC, so that whole XTC squeeze, Elvis Costello, Joe Jackson, all of that, that's always a fallback position. But again, this is really where Rune has come in handy, because I mean, if you see on the screen behind me, those are the albums I've listened to in the last week that are new things that I haven't listened to before. And so there's some 50s and 60s jazz there. I've been exploring that more. I mean, I don't know anything about jazz. I just know that I like it, and there are certain things that I gravitate to. I certainly can't speak intelligently about jazz and know, oh, that's that producer, that's that drummer, but I've been exploring more of that. I've been probably spending a little more time going back to listening to some very early old school hip hop, a little bit kind of Run DMC, Public Enemy, a little bit of that. I've been listening to some of Steven Wilson's stuff. I mean, he's got a couple of obscure things. It's called Bass Communion. That's kind of interesting. It's kind of ethereal and atmospheric, and that's kind of fun. I've been listening to a little bit more of, heading out on the electronica path a little bit, but again, that was something from back in the day. I mean back in the late 70s when Eno first hit with all the music for airports, all of that. So kind of returning to roots there too with that. I mean, I remember running through Los Angeles airport when Eno was doing that whole music for airports, and it was all the looping video and all that crazy stuff. So that's been kind of some fun music to revisit. Probably the only thing I don't listen to is country. I just just doesn't speak to me. And so much modern country now is produced by rock producers that it sounds like a bunch of recycled Def Leppard stuff to me anyway. So it's but we're about to start a podcast, a music podcast rather than an audio podcast. And I think we're going to concentrate more just, on those guilty pleasures, on those things that you just really love to listen to, whether it's popular or fashionable or not, so there
Jeff,
you go.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute...
again, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. Always, always fun to chat with you. I mean, it's good. It's kind of fun to do this on a little official level, but always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
I'm going to put a link to Tone Magazine in our comments, so
thank you.
People will be able to look and experience Tone if they haven't seen it for the first time, and I'd highly recommend that they see what Tone is all about.
And all of our back issues are available for free download. So, hey, I'm here in the Northwest saving the trees,
Jeff, thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve. Take good care.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.
Thank you for watching SoundOrg TV. This is the shameless plug time. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe. Send us comments, suggestions for future episodes, and keep the views coming. Drives my teenage son insane to know Dad's getting some hits. Thank you.